Welcome to Beti PT Be Skinny program, no more diets. Today we're going to check if this program is aligned with the Australian Dietary Guidelines. Thank you for listening everybody, and remember to always check with your doctor before commencing any new exercise or food modification program, and ensure you subscribe to the YouTube channel Beti PT and click on the bell for notifications if you like it, and feel free to ask questions below. Is this diet crazy? Is it a diet? It's not even a diet. I mean, I'm telling you, eat as much as you want. Eat vegetables, eat fruit, be plant-based. Avoid putting chemicals into your food such as salt, oil, flour, alcohol and sugar. Eat unprocessed wherever you possibly can. Be active and drink water. That's the summary of what we're doing here. And I don't know, does it sound crazy? I think it sounds very much the way we should be living our lives. Now notice I didn't say don't eat meat, I said be plant-based. So majority of your food will come from plants. We also measured our intake. So part of the program is to check what you're eating periodically to say, hey, am I eating enough nutrients? And also if you're eating in a particular way and if you're missing out on any key nutrients, it is very evident to you. We did that via chronometer, and I actually did kind of a typical day how I eat. I put the almond milk in there, I put my vegetables, I had some chickpeas, I usually eat chickpeas or lentils or something like that. I have some tofu. Potato, I have potato, I have rice, I have beans, I have fruit, I put oranges here, and I usually sprinkle, not every day, but I usually sprinkle some seeds or nuts, just a sprinkling. So I'm not saying don't eat nuts and don't have seeds, but we are saying just take it back a notch. Protein levels pretty much hit the mark and exceeded on many essential amino acids. With lipids, bumper with the omega-3, but it showed that I need to do more with my omega-6, which is great because then it tells me, okay, Beti, eat, put a bit more, omega-6 rich foods in your diet. So it alarms me, hey, you need to do something here, you need to correct it. So that is fantastic. Looking at the vitamins, pretty much on the mark with everything except B12. It only comes from bacteria in the ground, and the reason why beef and only grass-fed beef have it is because they're eating the grass directly from the ground. And if grain-fed beef does have it, I would say that it is supplemented. And vitamin D, well, we all know that comes from the sun, so it makes sense. And with the minerals, again, pretty much hit the mark with everything except for sodium. And what I didn't add in here was my Bragg's liquid aminos, which does have sodium, so I'm not too worried about my sodium levels. So this is my typical entry. You can see there's a lot of food there. It's how we typically eat, and you lose weight typically eating this way. Eat as much as you want and you're getting your nutrients. That's what it's all about. Are you getting your essential nutrients? So let's have a look at the Australian Dietary Guidelines. They can be found at eatforhealth.gov.au, and they do describe in a comprehensive manner how to eat healthily. I was pretty happy with it. Like for the average person that doesn't know much about or is unsure, it's a good starting point. And there's a lot of content and resources within that, like posters and items you can download, which I think is quite helpful. And there are calculators too. There's advice and tips on eating well. I'm glad we've got something and it's pretty good. And there are pictures and it helps. So let's walk through the guidelines and see how it aligns with what we are doing, or if it doesn't. Let's look at if there's any shocking revelations here. Okay. Guideline 1, to achieve and maintain a healthy weight, be physically active and choose amounts of nutritious foods and drinks to meet your energy needs. We've hit that right on the mark. We're saying be active. There's an exercise program incorporated within one of the levels, and choose the amounts of nutritious food. Now, nutritious food, that's the key. So you want the unprocessed foods that has the nutrition intact. That's what's important. And and it talks about children and older people, but effectively that we are hitting Guideline 1 right on the mark, like very much right on the mark. Now let's look at Guideline 2. Enjoy a wide variety of nutritious foods from these 5 food groups every day. Now it's interesting, I'm going to look at this. This was last updated in 2015, and I have seen something different at my doctor's clinic in terms of food pyramid. It's an upside down pyramid, and I haven't seen it here. So you know how they always had the food pyramid and the oils and fats were up the top, and it was like a triangle shape. Well, this one's a reverse one, and they had the vegetables right up the top. So it's interesting that they don't have this here. So vegetables, including different types of colors, legumes and beans. Fantastic. That's exactly what we're doing. Legumes and beans are mentioned in the vegetables. Interesting. Then it talks about fruit. Absolutely, go for it. Then it talks about grains, whole grain, absolutely. But it says then breads, cereals, rice, pasta, noodles. Now these are processed. But then it says quinoa. Okay, I will take the whole grain, so it's mostly unprocessed and far more nutritious. Lean meats, poultry, fish, tofu, nuts, seeds, legumes and beans. Here come the legumes and beans again. So they say 5 food groups, yet the legumes and beans are in 2 of the 5 food groups. And I'm with this because I think they are so important, having our legumes and beans. And nuts and seeds very sporadically, as I mentioned before, and literally, sprinkling on your food, not as in I'm going to get a bag of nuts and eat them all. That's the difference. Milk, yogurt, cheese, that's the next group. Milk, yogurt, cheese and alternatives. So we have the alternatives. We can have our plant-based milk, fine. And drink plenty of water, fine. So in terms of what we do, we are meeting all the food groups required. Next guideline number 3. Limit intake of foods containing saturated fat, added salt, added sugars and alcohol. Spot on. SOS free. So the saturated fat, that can be in the oils, salt, sugars, do you see it? SOS, it's right there. And even the alcohol, it's all there. Completely in line with what we're saying. So don't eat biscuits, so many cakes, pies, pasties, it says here processed meats, commercial burgers, pizza, fried foods, potato chips, crisps and other savory snacks. Get rid of it. Completely in line with what we're doing here. Completely in line. Replace high-fat foods which contain predominantly saturated fats such as butter, cream, cooking margarine, coconut and palm oil with foods that contain predominantly polyunsaturated and monounsaturated fats or spreads. I'd say just remove them and you won't have a problem. And this is the difference. If you're if you're at your happy weight where you are, if you're not a bodybuilder and you're not an athlete and your BMI is as it should be. So I say that because athletes and bodybuilders, their BMI may be skewed because they will have a lot more muscle, and hence it would skew to, to make it may show them as being overweight when they're actually very much not overweight. If you're at a happy weight, sure, you can replace them and you can have these fats. But if you're trying to remove weight, then yeah, we need to eliminate these. Okay. Limit foods and drinks containing added salt. Yes. It says read labels for lower sodium options in similar foods. So this is why we say have the Bragg's liquid amino or the coconut aminos instead. Limit intake of foods and drinks containing added sugars, confectionery, sugar sweetened soft drink, fruit drinks, vitamin waters, energy drinks and sport drinks. Spot on. Diet sodas, absolutely to be removed. Again, completely in line with what this is saying. If you choose to drink alcohol, limit intake. And not for pregnant women, absolutely not for pregnant women. But if you're a drinker that drinks, say, 6 times a year, you don't even have to think about alcohol because you've got a good relationship with alcohol. But if you're binge drinking every weekend, then you actually need to abstain from it completely because you can't have a little bit, you'll have it all. So you just look at how you are and your relationship with alcohol and then take it from there. You drink alcohol often, you need to remove it. You drink alcohol once every 2 months or even say once a month, then, and you drink like, 1 glass of wine, let's say, you're fine. Number 4, encourage, support and promote breastfeeding. Oh, look, I haven't mentioned breastfeeding once. This program is not intended for anybody breastfeeding or pregnant. So anybody lactating or pregnant, this is not for you to abstain completely. I would be talking to your doctor first and then seeing what we can do. Can you please touch base with me separately? And don't just go with any diet program. Guideline number 5, care for your food, prepare and store it safely. I'm going to make a whole video on this because this is pretty important. Now, I promote batch cooking, but I don't promote preparing for the entire week. I find that having food for a whole week, it's a bit questionable, and we need to ensure that we do prepare it in a clean environment and store it in an airtight container at the right temperature for a particular amount of time. So we're not storing it for 2 weeks in the fridge and then eating it, especially if it's a meat product. Absolutely, it's quite wrong. So guideline 5, I will be making an entire video based on food safety because it is very important. Out of all the 5 guidelines, yeah, we're pretty much in alignment. So the shocking revelation is that there is no shocking revelation. We're eating how we should be. The next one is the Guide to Healthy Eating. Now, this is the pie chart that we're all familiar with. So you've probably seen the pyramid. So the right way up, which is the oils on the top, that's the common one that's been around for a very long time, and I've also seen this pie chart as well. So let's go through this pie chart. Now, looking at the very top, it's got water, and so it's telling you drink water effectively. And then it basically says enjoy a wide variety of nutritious foods and every day from these 5 food groups and drink plenty of water. You will notice that looking at the grains, fruit and veg takes about, now let me try and work this out, it takes about, that's 50%, probably about 75% of all our food. And this is exactly how we are to eat, plant-based, and it's got it here, 75%. And then the other sort of 25% is, it's got milks, cheeses, and then it's got the meats. But let's go through this step by step. So let's look at the grains and cereals first. It says mostly whole grain. Now, looking at this, whole grain without being processed, I mean, even the rolled oats are processed, but it's the brown rice, white rice could even be in there, quinoa, polenta's a little bit processed, but basically everything else is heavily processed there. We can eat food from there, and I would actually recommend other grains and cereals that are not here that are far less processed. I think what they're trying to do here, though, is trying to relate to a wide audience, and so people can relate to having a piece of bread because it's easy to get and easy to prepare because you just take it out of the plastic bag. That would make a lot of sense there. So, who are they targeting? They're targeting all Australians, not just really health conscious, but like trying to get to everybody. So I will pay it for what they're doing, but what for we're doing, are we meeting it? Yes, we are, but we're sort of taking it that extra notch where we're really going, whole grain as much as we can. Vegetables, legumes and beans. Here we go. See, the legumes and beans are in here. They're in here. Even frozen vegetables, absolutely okay. Everything here. Canned vegetables, absolutely okay. Just check that they don't have any stabilizers, thickeners, or salts or sugars. So read the can, and if it does, just rinse it. Okay, so that's what you need to do, just rinse it. But effectively, everything there, and I like how they've got the mushrooms. Get those mushrooms in. Fantastic, love it, great. Then it goes to the fruit. And it should even have frozen fruit here, because frozen fruit is great as well. Just be mindful of where it comes from. We've had issues in Australia in the past where it's come from some countries. I just aim to get Australian fruit and veg wherever possible, even if it is frozen. I go to the farmers markets and they have their berries when they're not in season, they have them frozen, and I just buy that. So I'm happy, because you want to buy anything, especially in Australia, if it's crossing our borders of the states, you would prefer it not to. So if you're in Victoria, stick to Victorian produce, unless of course they're bananas. Bananas are chopped usually green, and then by the time we get them they go yellow. So bananas are okay, but any other fruit and veg, just try to stick to very local. I was having a difficult time last night trying to find tomatoes that were Victorian, because they do go through a process to cross the borders. I mean, if anybody has crossed a border in this country, even on a flight, you know how big they are with fruit and veg crossing borders. So they do go through a process. Let's look at the next one. So fruit are okay. They've even got canned fruit. Now just be careful with canned fruit that there's no added sugar in that, but if it's no added sugar, then it's fine. Usually they're in some juice, and borderline, but it's okay, go for it. Now let's go to the lean meats: poultry, fish, eggs, tofu, nuts, seeds, legumes. So they've dumped that all in the one. Okay, tofu, that's fine. Tofu is actually quite low in fat. If you see it in the supermarket, that's very low in fat. It's under 10% fat. It's got baked beans. Now, baked beans is full of sugar and salt, so it kind of contradicts one of their previous guidelines. So it actually contradicts guideline number 3 that they had. So baked beans, not so great. So would I recommend anybody have baked beans? No, it's processed. And although I love baked beans, being an Aussie, no. In fact, anything processed here, especially processed meats, I'm glad they don't have hams and, anything like bacon or anything like that. And they've got the poultry, fish, and the meat pretty much in its pure form. They don't have anything so processed. And just don't overdo it with the meat. It's not an everyday food. Okay, so you can't say, well, today I'm having chicken, tomorrow I'm having beef, the next day I'm having fish, then I'm having eggs. That's every day. So you just take it back a notch. Interesting how they've got the lentils and beans in this category. So that means from our perspective, it completely meets our program, completely in alignment with our program, because we're saying have the chickpeas, lentils and kidney beans and anything like that, have it every day. Have it as much as you like. And it does have the nuts in here as well. Interesting that it's got it in here. So I think they're probably saying we don't want to put it in with the fruit, even though I would say it's closely related to the fruit. They probably didn't want to put it in there because they didn't want people to have an abundance of it, because it is calorically dense. Sure, they are great. Nuts are fantastic, but they are very full of calories. So have a sprinkling on your food. And then they get to this interesting one, which is the milk. Now, here's another contradiction, because they specifically say evidence suggests that Australians need to eat more, and they actually said reduce fat milk, yogurt and cheese. Yet in the next line they specifically say we need to eat less food and drinks in high saturated fat, which is exactly cheese. So I'm very confused at this contradiction, but again, I just think that they're trying to accommodate all Australians and trying to reach just your average Aussie out there to try and get them to eat better. So, for example, coming home every night and having bacon and eggs every morning for breakfast is not a good idea. Coming home and having ham sandwiches for lunch is not a good idea. Having, meat every day is not a good idea. I think that they're trying to relay this message without shocking people too much. And that's why I think they've added the baked beans in there. It's like, maybe try baked beans instead of, bacon in the morning. I don't know. I think they're trying to, that's the sort of the angle they're trying to hit. So with milk, they've got a whole area dedicated to milk, and they do have soy drink in there, which I find interesting. They call it soy drink. But they do have that in there. So it meets our requirements because we have our dairy alternatives. We're in line with that because sure, we're not having milk or cheese or anything like, or yogurt, but we are having almond milk or oat milk or soy milk. With the milk, it says mostly reduced fat. So they are making a specific point here to have it reduced fat. Now, I don't know if you've seen what's in, especially like your singles cheeses that are very reduced fat, that they're full of other things. You know, have a look next time you're at the supermarket. You will find that, you know, those, especially those singles ones, that I don't know if they call them singles anymore because we went through a rebranding exercise, and I think because they were bought out from Kraft to another company. But those very processed cheddar cheese that are individually wrapped in plastic, because you know we need it to be individually wrapped in plastic because we need more plastic in the environment, of course. So have a look at the ingredients of that, and you will find that there is just this massive amount of ingredients, and it's just numbers and, you know, things. What is this? I expect it to be milk, rennet, salt. That's it. That's what you expect in your cheese. And now a lot of the rennet that they use is the vegan rennet, and they will specify that as well if you are vegan. And then right at the bottom it says use small amounts of oil. They don't say how much though, and this is where, you know, if we're going to be prescriptive, we need to say exactly how much. For us, it's eliminated. You don't need it. We're getting, if we need anything, in our seeds. So we're getting it from the pure whole form. This is highly processed, these oils, we don't need them. And only sometimes in small amounts, and then they have all the junk food and the alcohol and the flavored drinks and the biscuits. You know, like I see people having those savory biscuits every day. No, they're talking here, you know, and you can say, well, when does sometimes? When does that mean? I would say your birthday and Christmas, and that's it. So maybe twice a year. That's sometimes, yeah? Not every birthday, because, you know, if you've got kids, you've got a birthday nearly every weekend. It doesn't need to be in the house. In fact, this shouldn't be in the house. Those things are out. So, you know, let's look at, you know, the shocking revelation is, and you probably know now, nothing to be shocked about. We are completely in alignment, eating from all 5 food groups, and not only following what they're saying, but taking it to the next level of being really diligent, not using oils in small amounts by eliminating them, but not only having this junk food in small amounts, but eliminating it. Now, I'm going to go through the disclaimer because I was reading the disclaimer on this and I found it extremely interesting. So let's walk through it. Information provided for education and research information only. Well, I suppose I'm doing a bit of research here, so I think it includes me. The information on this website is presented by the Australian Government National Health and Medical Research Council for the purpose of disseminating health information free of charge to the benefit of the public. So it is clear that they're trying to get to everybody, and it makes so much sense because everybody's knowledge of nutrition is so wide varying. While the Commonwealth has exercised due care in ensuring accuracy of the material contained on this website, the information on the site is made available on the basis the department is not providing professional advice for a particular matter. And that's good that they state that, because you should be reaching out to your doctor for any particular matter. Like, that goes with anything. Reach out to your doctor. This website is not a substitute for independent professional advice. So this is important to know. If you're getting professional advice from your dietitian, especially, for example, you're trying to lose weight, this is not a substitute. And I would agree with that. It is not a substitute, you know, putting things like baked beans in there and cheese, you know, no. And this nothing contained in this site is intended to be used as medical advice and is not intended to be used to diagnose, treat, cure, prevent any disease, nor should it be used for therapeutic purposes or as a substitute for your own health professional's advice. And it goes on to say the Australian Government National Health and Medical Research Council does not accept any liability for injury, loss or damage incurred by use of reliance on information provided on this website. Great, that's sort of typical. Quality of information. Let's see where they're getting information from. The Australian Government National Health and Medical Research Council makes every effort to ensure the quality of information available on this website and updates information regularly. This was last updated in 2011, but the other pages were 2015. But in their defence, this information is constant. Like, it shouldn't change because it is what it is. If we've got it right. If we've got it wrong, that's a different story. But if we've got it right, healthy eating is healthy eating, and that's it. So I wouldn't expect too many changes. And then it goes on to talk about links to other websites. So, look, typical disclaimer of any website offering any kind of advice, saying, this is kind of general info, but please talk to somebody, you talk to your doctor or your health professional to seek specific advice. And fair enough too. Now, what I found extremely interesting were the public submissions. They were incredibly interesting, and this is where the public comes back and responds to this. And I think that this was really amazing. Like, this is the part. This is the part I was most interested in. So one comment came from Debbie. Debbie says, as a mother and wife, I feel that this proposal is unrealistic for lower class working families. We cannot afford to buy mass amount of fruit and vegetables. They are too expensive. Maybe the country would be healthier if we had ready access to organic and cheap fruit and vegetables. I do not like purchasing food covered in pesticides and other chemicals for my family, but I have to, as we cannot afford to buy completely organic and healthy fruit and vegetables. We need to access these things to make our family healthier. The government is making too much money on unhealthy and chemical foods and does not care about the people within the country and their health. We need change, not guideline on how to change our eating habits. This is interesting because I think there's two things to this part. So I think what Debbie's trying to say here is that she wants to buy fruit, but she doesn't want it covered in pesticides or any type of chemical. So she wants to buy organic. It's actually not too expensive, and even if you do buy a little bit of organic, if you go to your farmer's market, the way to avoid a lot of fumigation and use of pesticides is buy as local as you possibly can. Or when fruit and vegetables cross the state lines, they go through a process, and that's to stop the spreading of pests or disease. So that does happen, yes. So I think what Debbie's saying here is that she wants to do all this, but in an organic way. That's what she's saying. And because, to be honest, it is not unrealistic. If you were just eating fruit and veg, it's actually very cheap. It is the cheapest way to go. And if anybody is, feels like they're struggling to feed their family on a low or middle class budget, please reach out to me. Please reach out to me and let me know. And we can do more. We can send out more information on how to do this in a very economic way. And in fact, I've done some shopping hauls to show what I've been buying. And you've got to be mindful of where you buy your fruit and veg from. And I always ask, and I always number one, I look, is it Australian? Because I know it's gone through less of a process than it coming from overseas. And then, is it local? Is it Victorian for us? So do go through that. So nice one, Debbie. I know where you're coming from. You can do it, and feel free to reach out to me if you need any help. The next one I found extremely interesting. It came from Western Potatoes Pty Ltd. And they write, it is with great disappointment that I read this press articles about the dietary guidelines and what has been released today. I am sure that there has been a great deal of research behind this. I don't know about that. However, recommendation to consume and reduce potatoes by 40% does not appear to make sense. You are spot on, Western potatoes. You are spot on. Nationally or nutritionally or logically, you are spot on. And in fact, I think what's happening here is they're telling us to decrease our potatoes because they're thinking potato chips, crisps. That's what they're thinking. Oil on top of the potatoes. It's like, what do you put on your potatoes? You have a spud. You fill it with sour cream and bacon. That's what people are thinking. That's what they're associating it with. But it doesn't make any sense because potatoes are fantastic. So Western potatoes, I am with you. The next one comes from Dr. Graham Sayer. Overall, the guidelines are excellent. So congratulations. That's how I feel. So I'm with you, Dr. Graham Sayer. However, your support for the consumption of red meat is irresponsible in that there are now more than 8 studies showing the link between red meat and certain cancers. And while you have covered some of these, there exists ample alternatives to obtain protein, iron, zinc from alternative sources. And I'm with Dr. Graham Sayer with this because I've demonstrated this on the chronometer level, and I showed this just before in this video as well. So you can see how I've basically met all my nutritional requirements, and I didn't have any meat products or meat-derived products or dairy. It would appear that you have been influenced by the need to protect the meat and livestock industry. You would be aware that none of those persons living in the blue zones of longevity eat red meat. If it is not sufficient to say limit your intake of meat, but to exclude it completely from the new guidelines. And he's Dr. Graham Sayer. He's he's got some pretty impressive letters after his name. So former FedGov MO Overseas Division, former consultant. And he was a former consultant for who? We should be listening to Dr. Graham Sayer, and thank you for writing that in. That's I'm with you. I'm with you, Dr. Sayer. Dr. Sayer, Dr. Sayer, Dr. Sayer. Catherine writes, what is the significance of the rotation to put meat and dairy on top? So this must have been when they first released it, because dairy and meat is not on top. She writes, this is where fruit and veg used to be. Looks like they've changed it, because what I can see is fruit and veg on top. So Catherine, I think they may have listened to you right there. So great work there. Not all of the images on the plate are clear. In the old model, lentils were packaged with a label outlining what they were. My experience tells me that the few lay people would readily recognize these foods. And they have actually put labels on. Again, Catherine, nice one, very nice. Next one, there seems to be a large number of images of breads, rolls in the grains, the B and C group, which most of these appear to be white breads. Is this not what we are trying to combat, to increase the whole grains and variety rather than serves of bread per day? And I think they have changed it, because if we look, there's not that white bread. They have changed it. So there's no white bread there anymore. So I think Catherine, they're listening to you step by step. Lack of breakfast cereals depicted in BC's group, example Weet-Bix, common breakfast cereal. Weet-Bix is back in there. I think they've taken what Catherine's saying step by step and just doing it, because I can see those. There they go. The Weet-Bix are there. The Weet-Bix are there. The food group does not depict dried fruit at all. Now, they haven't put that in there, and that's pretty good because we want to limit that anyway. Just a little bit of dried fruit. Great to see the presence of alcohol in extras group. High five. There is no indication of what serve size of extra foods is. Okay, and that's what I was saying before, that we don't know about. It's not prescribed. It says limit. Well, limit to me could mean I'm having 5 days a week. I'm going to limit it to 3 days a week. It needs to be very, very prescribed, and I'm with you on that. So all in all, we can see that we are completely aligned with the Australian dietary guidelines, and we're meeting all our nutritional needs because we're measuring them. So do go through measuring what you're doing, just for your own check, to say, yep, you know what, I'm doing okay. I am on par with what I need to be having. And it's not just about where you're getting your calcium from. Like that's the best one when I say to people, no theory, straight away, where are you getting calcium from? Where are you getting your protein from? So let me just remind you of my calcium, 180% of the recommended daily intake, 180, and that's with 0 dairy. And in terms of my protein levels, I basically hit the mark with, most being well over 100%. And that's the essentials. That's with 0 dairy and 0 meat. It's very doable. And I'll tell you what, in terms of, and I never did this to decrease the amount I spend on groceries, but it's almost like I have like a bit of a challenge now. It's like how much or how little can I spend and feed my family with a nutritionally rich food during the week and not spend too much. And it's like it's become a bit of a challenge. And the way I tend to do it also is when I go shopping, my aim is to have as little food with GST linked to it, because then it has not been processed. So that's another good one to do. Look at your grocery bill and look at what items are marked with GST. And if they're marked with GST, look, if it's something like toothpaste, it's toothpaste, it's going to have GST. But I'm talking about food. If it's food, you need to try and avoid it having GST. So that can be a bit of a challenge for you, if you like, as well. So you can be having your whole foods. Thank you so much, everybody. I hope you enjoyed this video. And Betty PT says, be fit and stay healthy. Betty PT signing out. Thanks.